Hello, horror fan, best friends, and ghoulish knights, and welcome to the 10th episode of Murders with Mertens. I am your host, Joe, and this is a podcast about horror, psychological thrillers, cosmic horror, the supernatural, sci-fi horror, body horror, the horror-adjacent scary films in general. Each episode, I sit down with a guest and discuss one of their favorite scary films so we can gush about everything that makes it just so damned cool. Viewers, thank you for tuning in to this fledgling podcast. You can provide some much-needed support of this little endeavor by subscribing to the channel, liking the video, dropping a comment below to keep the conversation going, and sharing an episode with someone you know who loves that particular film. It's all greatly appreciated. But enough of all that rigmarole. We need to introduce today's guest, Jose Ruckus. Brandon, how the hell are you?
Pretty good, man. How are you?
Doing okay. Getting to the end of my work week, so to speak, and looking forward to a little time off, and glad we could put this thing together. So for those who don't know, who are you?
I am. Most people know me formerly. I was the host of the Wild Aces podcast that was going around. I don't do a lot these days. I do some sports content here and there. I stream, and I do have a new podcast of my own bouncing around right now called Pop Cultural Studies, which is like a deep dive into some weird pop culture stuff. Like we have an episode about James Cameron's Spider-Man movie that never got made. That's pretty fun.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
cool.
That's Jose Ruckus.
Nice. So yeah, we've been we've talked to each other for a good while on the socials
mostly
and
on
whatnot.
Twitter.
Yeah. And I'll say it's fun that we finally were able to put this together because I think we both have quite a bit of love for today's feature film. Today we're going to be talking about a real favorite of mine and yours, Mulholland Drive, a 2001 psychological thriller written and directed by David Lynch. Jose Ruckus, what is your history with this film?
I have a complicated history with this movie because I had I only saw it this year. Yeah, when the 4K Criterion Blu-ray that we have right here, when this came out, I saw that you bought it, and I know this is a movie I've seen you talk about just a bunch on Twitter. And so I was like, you know what? I want to watch it in 4K. It's a movie that I've known about for an extremely long time. But very recently, I've been getting really into David Lynch. And I'm a Twin Peaks fan for pretty much since I got out of high school. You're going to hate to hear this, Joe, but that was 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's fair.
But like right around my senior year of high school, I got really into Twin Peaks. I think that was around the time it got put on Netflix. And at that point, I had watched, right after that, I watched Lost Highway.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and then I watched Fire Walk with Me, and I sort of got the impression from that I was more of a Mike Frost fan than a David Lynch fan. That I thought that those were the elements of Twin Peaks that he had, sort of the mythology stuff and all that kind of thing going on. I thought that that's more what I enjoyed than anything else. But recently, I've been sort of getting more into the idea of like surrealist aspects of filmmaking and stuff, that maybe not everything that's on the screen has to be like literal interpretation of like what's going on in the plot and stuff. And so I've been trying more David Lynch films. I recently watched Eraserhead around last year. Really, really liked that. And so I decided to take the dive in with Mulholland Drive this year. And I watched it the night I got the Blu-ray. Then I watched it again that morning, the next morning. I immediately watched it again. And I think I've seen it now 4 times this year. I really like the movie.
I mean, many consider this like his finest work. And for good reason. It's a hell of a film. A lot of people consider this one of the best films of not just the aughts, but really the past 20 years. And it came out in 2001. I actually got to see this in the theater in its initial run with a good friend of mine back in undergrad, Brian. We were both huge Twin Peaks fans. I think he had seen it a little bit prior to me. I got into it in undergrad probably around 2000, 2001. I think whenever it was that the initial like DVD release of the first season came out, and it came out without the pilot.
Yes.
because there were all these weird rights issues, and like different studio owned the pilot, I think because they did like a film distribution of it in Europe or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was
Well,
weird and fucked up.
the way that they had made it was like that, which is actually sort of important because it's the same way Mulholland Drive got made, which was that the initial idea was David Lynch was going to shoot this pilot for a TV show with keeping the rights to make it a movie in case they didn't pick it up. He could put an ending on it and sell it for rights over there. And I think that's what ended up happening in Europe or whatever, was that they took that pilot and they took on the Red Room scene from the second episode and just put that out as a film.
Yep, and there's like other weird stuff kind of towards the end of the pilot, the European film version of it. But yeah, we got totally sucked in to the point where I was like probably using Kazaa or something like that to download season 2 episodes, because there was no way to see it unless you had like a video store that had the VHS copies. And yeah, so I was downloading they were recorded off of TV in some Scandinavian country because there were the subtitles in that language, whatever it had been. And the little voiceover that comes in during the end credits talking about what's coming up next and all that other fun stuff. And that was how I finished Twin Peaks. Totally blown away by it. And all of a sudden we saw, on the kind of fledgling film websites of the time, like Dark Horizons and Ain't It Cool News, information about Mulholland Drive. And I'm like, okay, this looks dope. Like Lost Highway. That movie came out when I was a senior in high school. All the stuff with what's his face that played Beretta with the creepy camcorder and all that.
Robert Blake?
Yes, Robert Blake. Always found that super cool and creepy.
So weird.
Yeah, I'm like, this kind of has that vibe. It feels a little bit like Twin Peaks, like it's leaning heavy into 50s nostalgia, but they're like an LA Hollywood lens. Cool. And we went and saw this thing and were just totally blown away. I remember just as soon as there was a DVD release of it, had that. God, probably nearly burned a hole in that over the past 20 years.
You finally got the one that had the 10 keys to unlocking the film, or
yeah, the little list. Yep. Which I don't know that they were necessarily that necessary, but I
feel that they're not super necessary. We'll get into it later, but I feel like a lot of the people like draw these like huge like this. What is essentially like a really simple conclusion being like it's this massive revelation. It's like pretty obvious from
yeah. It's I think in your first viewing, especially if you're not super familiar with David Lynch, it's very easy to be like, what the fuck? I don't understand what's happening. These characters are now suddenly different characters, and sure. But yeah, watching it just another time or two, it's like, okay, this is very, very clear what they're trying to say. But yeah, eventually, nice Criterion edition. And then I get the news last summer. Oh yeah, we're going to start finally doing 4K discs. Thank God, because a film like this absolutely just sings in 4K.
The 4K version, the Criterion 4K edition is so good. Like
the pores,
it's one of the best looking movies I own. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's ridiculously good looking. And yeah, this is absolutely a film worth owning in multiple editions throughout the years for sure. But yeah, I can't wait to see what they do next. I really hope that
today, as we're recording this, Lost Highway is coming out in 4K.
Hot damn. Yeah. Oh God, that's good to hear. Because I really need to revisit that. I've only seen it a handful of times. And the soundtrack is basically what introduced me to Rammstein and who else? God, I can't remember. But yeah, it's a fun movie. I was about to say that there's this whole thing about this like remastering of Inland Empire, which was his most recent film from
Yeah.
like about '05 or
Yeah,
'06.
it's been like 10 years since it came out almost.
Yeah, very long time. And there was a Blu-ray edition of it once. It is long out of print. And I unfortunately read some not great sounding things about how the restoration is handling this. It's using a lot of AI to kind of redo things, and it really changes the look, and not in a great way, because this film is sort of a time capsule of that era when people were just getting into using digital camcorders to shoot feature films, and it has such a specific look. And God, the article or thread or whatever it was that I was reading, they were fairly upset about it, just from a standpoint of somebody going back and just fundamentally changing what their film originally was, just doesn't sit well with them. And I'm like, yes and no at that. I mean, we've certainly had, the special editions of Star Wars, for example, that have, helped to ruin my childhood. But, some stuff is for the better. Like we finally get Darth Vader's lightsaber in red in that one scene in, A New Hope. But we'll see how that goes, because I just want an edition of Inland Empire that I can buy and consume. Because
I've never seen that one. It's been
it's
a movie that's interesting to me. I've heard like a lot of people I've heard like David Lynch fans talk about how they don't like that movie. Like it's such like it's a very different kind of film. And I would love to see like Criterion just picked up Lost Highway, and they have some other David Lynch films. I would really like to see them do a full on director approved restoration of that, so I could finally like watch
yeah.
it.
And whatever this, AI method that they're using is, apparently it is with his approval. So,
Interesting.
I'm very curious to see what kind of Frankenstein's monster this ends up being. I just want to be able to watch this film again, because I've only really seen it the first time. But I remember not liking it as well as a lot of other David Lynch. And I think it's because it leans into how, I guess, the tone of a lot of his later movies is a lot, almost like, I don't want to call it mean spirited, but it is, kind of dark and just not necessarily the fun and quirky of a lot of his earlier stuff.
Yeah.
But which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but it's definitely a different tone from, what a lot of fans of, say, Twin Peaks would enjoy out of David Lynch, or Blue Velvet even. But fucking Mulholland Drive, not to spin off into just the David Lynch, pantheon here in general.
Talk about like a single David Lynch movie, because he reuses so many elements in each film. There's so much crossover and stuff. It's like
all the blue, the
red
flashing
curtains.
Lights. Yeah, absolutely. And his regular stable of actors, which, we'll definitely get to as we talk about this. I think we should probably jump in here. This film, it starts, and is this a Gap ad? Circa, 1998, 99, something like that, because it certainly feels like one. We got this odd little dance number. I don't know, kind of swing music type stuff going on. And
it's put together super weird too, because like it's this weird, like kind of like almost rippling purple color with like these silhouettes in the background.
Yeah, and they're overlaid on top of each other. It's almost like an early iPod ad mixed up with the old Gap ads for khakis. It's strange. And it ends with this kind of distorted image of Naomi Watts' character, Betty, all dolled up in a sparkly dress, and she's got this old couple with her, and they're just kind of beaming at the camera, and that's it. And I have thoughts as far as what's going on there for later, but I hate to spoil too much early on. And then there's this fun little POV shot of somebody just kind of crawling into bed and getting close to the pillow, and then darkness. Once again, we don't want to get into too much, but there's just very interesting foreshadowing that's going on with all this, right?
Yeah, and it's one of those things like the first time you watch it, you forget about this even happening by the
Yeah.
time you get to the end of the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important for sure, but it's absolutely one of those things you're going to forget it by the time you get to the end. And then we get our titles, and one of the best Angelo Badalamenti themes, in my opinion. I love the score in this film so much, and I think it borrows a lot from Twin Peaks, but in all the kind of best ways.
It's very, very good.
The guy knows synths, and he has a lot of fun with them. That's cool. So you get credits and kind of the winding tracking shot of the limo driving along Mulholland Drive. I just learned this fact for the very first time. The license plate is the plate from Larry David's vehicle on Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Real. Oh yeah, that license plate gets like reused a lot, doesn't it?
That's
like
funny.
it's a prop license plate
That's
that like
really
you bounce
funny.
around a lot. Yeah.
That's cool. And we finally get through the credits, and you're seeing all these names, and it's like, oh wow, I know that person. I can't wait to see them show up for the 1 minute that they're in this film, right? Some of these people just come and go, and they are maybe a line or two.
Especially.
Yes. And so we move to the inside of the limo, and it's Laura Harring's character, and they stop, and oh shit, this doesn't look good. And then these crazy teenagers driving like assholes come out of the woodwork and crash into the car, and she gets a lucky break because she was about to get off there. She stumbles out of the wreckage and
somehow survives the car crash.
Yes.
The other car of the kids racing does not care that they just saw a head-on collision. They
don't come back. Nothing. No. Nope. They keep on moving. It's a whole thing. She kind of stumbles out, very clearly kind of dazed and disoriented, and she's bleeding a little bit, and decides, I'm just going to walk down the hill from Mulholland Drive. Okay. And she does all the way to Sunset Boulevard. And I don't have a great concept of geography in LA, but I took a look at a map, and it's at least a good, as the crow flies, mile and a half, 2 miles, something like that, in heels, down a hill, through all sorts of brush and so on.
It's
with a concussion.
Strange. Yeah, very much concussed.
Oh yeah, but she makes it, and she gets a little freaked out by this couple piling out of a doorway, and she goes to take a little nap under a bush.
Yep, like you do.
Yeah, like you do. As she's walking along, though, there are some amazingly beautiful shots that I never really caught. There's this one where she's kind of in silhouette walking along, and you've got the palm trees, and God, this is a really fun film, and I'm just not going to stop gushing about a lot of this. And then to your earlier comment, we cut to the detectives and all the crew kind of surveying the crash site, and it's Robert Forster and the dude from A Simple Plan, whose name I can't remember. But this is something that I wanted to bring up as far as just David Lynch's use of actors and everything. So the revival of Twin Peaks, which I know a lot of people had, a few issues with, because it was all kind of the dark, mean, kind of sinister aspects of the show.
Finished it. I need to go back. I need to go back and watch it. I got like halfway through it, and I was just like, I'm just tired, man.
That's fair, because I don't think it was what a lot of people were expecting. They really wanted
it absolutely was not what I was expecting.
Yeah, it was definitely new David Lynch and not old David Lynch, for sure. Yeah. But so many of the people that came back for that third season died that year or after, including Robert Forster and the dude from A Simple Plan. It's just kind of sad, maybe don't come back to a David Lynch show nearly 30 years later. I don't know. But, you know, they have their little back and forth about, yeah, there's probably somebody else who is here. And then we never see them again. And it's like the most TV pilot thing ever of introducing some characters that seem like they might be important. And I guess we're just never going to see them again.
Yeah. We haven't actually touched on that yet, but Mulholland Drive, like initially, like the very kernel of the idea was it was going to be a Twin Peaks spinoff. And so that kind of fell apart, but they kept the name. And this was shot as a TV pilot. And so a lot of the stuff that you see in the beginning of the movie, especially like the introduction.
Yeah, like the first hour and a half or so is essentially the pilot.
Jump a little head into the plot. Like the pilot ends when they find the body. That's where the cutoff is. And then essentially everything after that, David Lynch came up with in like a day, which is insane.
Well, you know, Studio Canal gives you $7 million to complete it. You'll come up with stuff fast enough.
Yeah, there's an interview with him on the Criterion Blu-ray where he says like the day he got the green light, he got it sooner than he expected. And he's like, I had no ideas. I had no idea what to do. So like he did like a meditation because he's super into like transcendental meditation or whatever. And he's like, I had the entire idea for the rest of the movie that night meditating. It's like, that's wild. But there's a deleted scene with these with the detectives.
Fun! I gotta check that out.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what's going on in it and like what it's supposed to mean or like plot wise. But yeah, there's one little extra bonus scene that you can watch with them. Damn fine coffee.
Oh, you know it. Yeah. So we cut back to this apartment complex, and Laura Harring's character wakes up when she hears, a door open and shut, and it's this lady who's obviously going on a trip, and this cabbie who's having the worst time ever handling all the luggage and getting it into the trunk and everything. He nearly falls in himself, but she takes this opportunity to get out from under the bush and run into an apartment door that's clearly left open, because if you are more than willing to leave most of your bags in an open taxi cab in LA, you're also the kind of person who's going to leave your front door wide open too.
Yep.
Yeah. Like you do. So yes, this lady goes back into the apartment looking for some keys and clearly does not see this lady who's underneath the table that would have been in her eye line as she walks towards the keys. But whatever, that doesn't matter because it's still just a fun set of shots. And yeah, we keep going from here. Another little nap, this time under a table. Again, clearly concussed. And then from here, we move on to Winkies. And one of the most terrifying scenes in any David Lynch property. This is definitely one of those films that's more like thriller than it is straight up horror film. But it's moments like these.
Yeah, there are like 3 sequences in the movie that are like genuinely really scary.
Yes, yeah, you've got this, you've got basically the very end of the film. Yeah, what's your other one there?
I would say when they find the body. That freaked me out the first time.
That's pretty horrific. Yeah, especially by the time they come around the corner and see the face. Yeah, that's a lot. So Winkies, which is kind of a takeoff on Denny's because I guess they couldn't get the rights at the time. They basically all but copied the logo. And you just get these couple of guys having breakfast, and the one wants to tell the other guy about, the dream that he has been having. And, well, it's pretty horrible. There's a man in back of this place, and he's scaring the shit out of me. And I
can see him through the wall.
Yeah, and I hope that I don't see that face ever outside of a dream. Okay, well, hey, let's go check it out because that won't be a bad idea. So these guys. The one guy with the super thick eyebrows is a famous character actor whose name I can never remember, but he's in everything, right?
Yeah.
So they, make their way beyond or behind the diner, and it's almost like they're reusing the same camera shot of moving forward in the way that it seems to take forever, but it really helps to build the dread that by the time they make it to the part, of this alleyway
You're
where the
expecting
dump,
to go around the wall. You're really
yes,
expecting it, and then it just kind of like it's part of what scares me with it is it's the motion that it makes. It's like this, like it's fast and slow at the same time, but the head just like slides out,
mm-hmm.
right? It's so weird.
And it's terrifying. You have this, probably homeless person just covered in grime with just this terrifying face just pop into the camera. And the dude that's been dreaming about this essentially dies of fright.
Yep.
Yep. And it's one of these non sequitur scenes where you have no idea what's actually going on at this point in your first viewing. It's like, is this just a collection of weird shit? Great if it is, but I'd love it if it has some, importance to the plot. Oh, but it does.
Weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
So weird.
And from here, oh, and important message that they're trying to tell on this point, just, stay away from the alley behind a Winkies.
Yep.
That's what we're supposed to take away. And then we get this odd confluence of phone calls, basically trying to figure out where, I guess the lady from the limo has gone. It's all this back and forth and these weird phones with lights, just keeping them warm or something. I don't know. And is it here where we're introduced to Mr. Roque?
We don't know that it's him at the time, but yeah, it is.
Okay.
He makes the call to say like the girl is missing, calls the other guy, and that guy calls the phone we never see again. And then that phone calls the phone with the red lampshade.
Right. That we're supposed to be paying attention to because, we'll get back to that. Yeah. But yes, from here, oh, where are we?
From the red lampshade, that's when she comes off the airplane, right?
Yes. Okay, yes. Betty and the creepy old folks. And she is such the plucky ingenue, just wide-eyed and ready to take on Hollywood. And it's very clear that she just met these people on the plane. And they're those people that when you're on a plane, they're having a conversation through the entire flight. And it's clear that they've just met each other and you're just trying to watch a stupid movie on your phone or whatever. And it's really irritating, but they are absolutely those people.
Yes.
They make their way outside. They say their goodbyes. And, Betty gets picked up by a taxi and she heads off to her aunt's place.
The dialogue in this scene is like super obviously ADR'd in, and it's like really fake and like intentionally so. Like it's something that you can't not notice how like the words aren't really matching up with their mouths at all.
Yep.
You can read some meaning into that, but it's also just like David Lynch weirdness.
Yeah, a little bit. She takes off in her taxi. They take off in a limo with these super wide, stick your fingers in your mouth and show all of your teeth grins. So yeah, there's something going on with them. Not sure what yet, but then I think we basically get right to her aunt's apartment from here. And we get Coco and a close-up of dog shit. Yep. This is one of the things that ABC really did not like about the pilot.
Yeah.
The extreme focus on dog shit. Can't imagine why.
I mean, you can ask for that to be cut out. I don't think it's...
You could. It's, maybe that was a deal breaker on Lynch's part. I don't know. But Coco's great. It's legendary Ann Miller. She's been in movies since time immemorial, and this was her final role. But the dialogue in this scene, the sincerity behind it is so overwhelming. It's just how saccharine it is with their introduction to each other and so on. And, ultimately it just lends to the dreamlike quality of what this film ultimately is, of course.
And also, like, especially with Ann Miller being there and stuff, there's a lot of like 50s nostalgia, throwbacks to old classic era Hollywood and stuff, and sort of that acting and writing style is kind of what you're getting.
Yeah, when you would get the super over the top enunciation of kind of like East Coast socialite who has that almost English accent, but it's not, like Madonna.
Hepburn. Yeah.
Yes, Madonna's accent that she sort of developed after she, grew up in Bay City, Michigan. But so she is shown her aunt's apartment. It is a badass apartment. It is so cool with all the old woodwork and everything. And I know that's what they were going for, kind of the old Hollywood style of dwelling. And it's gorgeous. Coco leaves the key. She explores the place, and she comes to the bedroom and finds the dress and the shoes and everything on the floor. And she's like, okay, that's weird. And then gets all perky again as she goes into the bathroom, only to realize there's a naked lady in the shower.
Yep. And she doesn't seem to think anything weird about that.
Yeah, or weird about just opening the door to say hello. Also weird.
Well, like, she sees that there's a person in there, and then she doesn't realize that there's a person in there until she opens the door. It's a very strange scene.
Yes. But they have a little bit of a conversation. Laura Harring's character is clearly freaked out. Somebody just opened the door on you while you were trying to take a shower. So I get that. But also, she understands that she broke into this place and she's kind of in hiding and she has no idea what the fuck is going on with herself at the moment. So they kind of part ways for a little bit. And there is the mention that there was a car accident. And I understand. I saw the dress. It's a weird react.
The dress must have been like bloody,
maybe. I don't know.
It's also, she can't remember her name. Is really like,
although she doesn't really say as much. Only
That's
that
true.
Betty asks her what her name is, and then quickly backpedals and says, "You know what? I'm going to let you get back to that. We'll talk when you're done." And and wow, Betty has assumed way too much at this point, because she thinks that this lady is her aunt's friend that she just didn't know was going to be there.
Yep.
And at this point, Laura Harring is like, okay, I got to come up with something. And it's the cliche of, I'm going to get the name off of the poster, and that's my name, because she sees a poster in the bathroom for a Rita Hayworth movie and just goes with Rita, which it works. It works. So they meet again back in the bedroom, and Rita just needs some fucking sleep. Those first couple of cat naps didn't do it. Yeah. And, she checks out her head, and there's this horrible fucking bruise up there. And, it's like, oh, you shouldn't sleep if you have a concussion. Yes, we get that, Betty.
She's slept for like 2 days straight now.
Yeah. But, at least she's still alive. But, she covers her up with the robe and decides, okay, I'm just going to let her sleep. And we cut from here to Ryan Entertainment and the Castiglione brothers. Just this part just rips.
This is the scene where the first time I watched it, I was like, okay, this is weird. It's very like, lots of scenes are happening. I don't know. This was the first scene where I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I can't. This is a weird one.
I can't remember how far we are into the film at this point, but it's very clear. It's like, okay, we're just continuing to introduce the characters that will be part of this story and so on. But yeah, if this is like a good 25, 30 minutes into the film, you need to stop introducing characters unless you're this film. But yeah, we've got a very young Justin Theroux and a bunch of old dudes sitting around a boardroom table, and they're waiting on a couple of guys, the Castigliani brothers, who are clearly mobsters. And there's something to do with the casting of the lead actress of Adam, Justin Theroux's character's movie. And we get the conversation about how they were going to serve them an espresso, and they had problems with that before. And, you know, I don't know how hard it is to make a tiny cup of espresso, but apparently it's very difficult for Angelo Badalamenti's character. Of course, the Castigliani brothers, played by the composer of the film, Angelo Badalamenti, and Dan motherfucking Hedaya. Yeah, badass. They're such a weird couple of dudes, and it's great. Pulls out this envelope. Headshot comes out. This is the girl, which will come back. It's said 4 different times in this scene, and multiple times throughout the rest of the film.
Very important close-up of the name of the girl.
Camilla Rhodes.
Yep.
Yeah, played by Melissa George in this part of the film, who later goes on to be an absolutely horrible character in Alias, which also guest starred Justin Theroux at one point or another. I fucking love that show. I miss it. But yes. What do you mean this is the girl? And essentially telling him, without telling him, yes, this is who you are going to cast as the lead actress. And it's in the middle of all of this conversation that the espresso is served. And Angelo asks for a napkin, can barely get it out. The guy's got to lean in and ask again. He takes a sip of this thing and has to spit it all out into this napkin.
This is what I was talking about. This is where it gets weird for me. And I was like, I'm watching a David Lynch film.
Yes, I think when I first saw this as well, I was just more aware of just how weird he tends to get in general. And, you know, it's like, okay, I'm not getting the answer I want, and therefore I just need to get this all out of my system. That very violent final wipe with the napkin, and there's just screaming that ends with Dan Hedaya and Angelo Badalamenti just repeating
screaming at each other. Yeah,
this is the girl. And okay, guess that's it. Adam goes to leave.
I have a read on the coffee scene. If you want.
Please.
Last night I had a realization while watching it. I think I know why it's there. Much like with the casting of the actress in the movie, the quality of the coffee does not matter to the character. It's not specifically what he wants, so they reject it. It's not about the quality of the actress that they want for the movie. They want this specific person. I think that's what I got out of it.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. Yeah, that's cool. Then we get a scene that is basically just commentary, I guess, on Jack Nicholson smashing the shit out of somebody's car with a golf club, because that's what Adam Kesher does to the Castigliani brothers' limo, and then jets off in his tiny little Porsche Boxster that apparently was all the rage back in about 2001.
Yep.
It's okay.
It's a very hotshot director car.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So essentially, Adam pisses off the mob. Rita continues to sleep. Oh, yeah.
Smart.
Good move. Rita continues to sleep, and we go right from just a shot of her sleeping to Mr. Roke. Again, played by Mike Anderson, the little man from Another Place in Twin Peaks, who was fitted with prosthetic arms and legs to, give him this weird, unnatural appearance of being a kind of a full-bodied man, but with a very small head. And he has barely any lines in the movie, but he's got such a presence. I think, didn't he have kind of a falling out with David Lynch after this?
That's why he's not in The Return, because they had some disagreement. I don't know totally the details of it, but they don't work together anymore. But this thing is so weird because there's the weird glass wall between them that has to be like spoken to with the speaker, and the blue lamp behind him in this like weird beige room. It's such like, I love the set design David Lynch uses. It looks somehow both really normal and really off-putting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
there's just this guy standing behind him.
Oh yeah, it's his attendant, of course, his manservant. It's totally normal, right?
Yeah.
But it's just the conversation about how, well, we're gonna shut down the movie now, I guess. And I guess Roque is, I guess, at least some kind of a head of this, faction of the mob in LA. Whatever,
yeah,
but we cut.
It's this weird like the Hollywood machine, and Mr. Roque is like the head of that. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, this film is very much commentary on, living and working in LA and Hollywood, in general. And totally makes sense. And now we move on to the best hitman ever. We get Joe, who very much has a look that's kind of modeled after David Bowie. And
he's got different colored eyes.
Yeah, heterochromia, and he's got, the Union Jack t-shirt and everything. And it's just this kind of odd little back and forth conversation of a couple of guys catching up. And
they're talking about a car accident.
Mm-hmm.
And this crazy car accident. Yeah.
Yep. And that's the book, right? It's, a little bit of a MacGuffin here. The book isn't really as important as the fact that the book exists, right? And once he gets confirmation that that's what he's looking for, he just, pops his friend in the head. And there's this fun little close-up of the guy's hair with the blood on it.
It's so weird.
Of it. It looks like something out of a Nine Inch Nails video.
Yeah.
Definitely like Downward Spiral era. But yeah, so he's, going to kind of cover up the action, and he wipes the gun down, puts it in the guy's hand, tries to put the finger on the trigger, and pops off another round through the wall into the neighboring office. And he hears a yelp from next door. Oh shit. Goes next door, finds this woman who's clearly injured, not entirely certain what happened to her because of, just the fact that
real bad.
Yeah, she got shot in the ass essentially, and there is, well, let's be fair, quite a bit of ass to absorb that shot. And he comes in close like he's going to help her, but then tries to take her out, but she kind of turns the tables on him a little bit, and they have their little fight, and she's crazy loud. And she's really fighting for her life, and I got to give her props for that because, I mean, you goddamn well better. But he manages to drag her out into the hallway, glances down the hall, and there's the janitor with the vacuum cleaner, just standing silently. Hey, man, you got to come here and help me. You got to help make a phone call. I can't do everything. And somehow this dumbass comes along to help him. He offs the lady from the neighboring office. The guy comes in, just stands there. He pops him, grabs him back inside. Of course, the vacuum cleaner has turned on after he pops the guy. And he's like, well, I guess I'll just shoot the vacuum cleaner to turn it off. Yeah. It just continues to spiral for this guy because, of course, the thing, produces a ton of smoke, and the fire alarm in the building goes off. I gotta get out of here.
It's so loud. It's so funny.
Oh God, it's just one of the best comedic scenes in this film. This guy cannot catch a break, and yeah.
And so it's this movie does like everything so well because it has like these comedy scenes here. It has these extremely frightening scenes.
Yeah, it's a lot of little vignettes at this point.
Yeah, like you get the full spectrum of like entertainment with this movie because they're bouncing around doing all kinds of stuff.
Yep, and still really just introducing characters at this point.
Yep.
But that's okay. It will add up to something eventually. So Rita finally wakes up, and she has no idea who she is. But they decide to, look in her purse, and they find a shit ton of cash and a funky blue key. And, what are we going to do? We're all, they just cut from here to the hitman again and a buddy shaking down a working girl. And it's a very uncomfortable scene. She's got a horrible bruise in the shape of a handprint on her arm. So she is clearly used and abused. And I think it's right after this that we learn that Adam is Adam's kind of fucked.
Car, his assistant calls him and lets him know that they've shut down the movie completely. And she wants him to come try to figure
fix
out
everything.
Something to do, but he decides to go home.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go home. I'm gonna go home. And then we cut back to Rita and Betty, and this is where we get the Mulholland Drive. That's where I was going. And again, like super, like over the top, sincere dialogue. And, we should just come right out and say it. This is Betty continuing to just try to be like the best version of herself. Yep. This is like her dream of who she should be and who she could be. And she's, again, going to be the plucky ingenue, and she's going to figure out the mystery. And yep. So they're going to Scooby-Doo this shit. And boy, they certainly try. Let's see here.
Is this where they came up with the idea to make the phone call?
Yeah, I think that's where they talk about they're going to do it. They don't quite do it yet because we cut back to Adam arriving at home, and he sees the truck from the pool guy and finally gets into the bedroom, and it's Billy Ray motherfucking Cyrus.
He sees the truck from the pool boy, walks in, looks at the pool. There's
nobody there. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And he opens the bedroom door, and there's his wife and Billy Ray Cyrus in the bed. And they've clearly heard him coming in because they're just kind of waiting for him at this point. And what does Billy Ray Cyrus say to him? Just forget you saw anything. It's better that way.
I love Billy Ray's character in this.
Yeah,
like,
Gene.
He's so like weirdly sincere. Like he actually he seems to like sort of, he's like, dude, just like,
I think he feels bad. I think
there's nothing that we can really like do about it, man. It's happened. Like it's better for you to just like not freak out about it.
It's, I will be supportive in your cuckolding. I will be that shoulder.
I noticed that like on the table next to him, there's like flowers and a bottle of wine and stuff. So he's like really romancing his wife too.
Yeah. And we get their little their fight as
his wife seems to be mad at him for her cheating on him.
Yes. And so he just has a complete mental breakdown, opens up the dresser drawer, grabs her jewelry box, and finds a can of paint to go dump all over it. And, he gets a little handsy with her, and, he's not doing well. But Billy Ray, makes the very important comment, that's no way to treat your wife. I don't care what she done. after he slugs him. And, she gets Billy Ray to throw him outside of the house. He has this great little slide across the patio stones.
Yeah.
And he just kind of drives off covered in paint. I think we cut back to Betty and Rita. This is where they're hiding the cash along with the key in that hat box. And they decide to go to, find a payphone at this point, I think. And they make their call and talk to a cop that works in traffic. And, he starts to ask too many questions and Betty hangs up in a panic. And they're like, okay, there was an accident. Yes, this is all making sense. Let's grab a newspaper. Let's get some coffee. Let's figure it out. And here's where we're introduced to Diane, the waitress.
We're back at the Winkies.
Mm-hmm. The same Winkies from the horrible man behind the place situation. I'm just going to keep calling him the man behind the place because it kind of works like the little man from Another Place. Right? And Diane, they really fixate on the name on her name tag, and Betty even repeats the name. So they can't find anything in the paper. They, drink their coffee, do their thing. Let's see here. Oh, and we cut back to Adam's house, and this is where we get the couple of mob guys that are looking for him. And
I love this scene.
Yeah, Adam Kesher. Adam Kesher, just over and over again. The way that she, after he just kind of casts her aside, you hear her hit something. There is a very audible thunk, and she just climbs right up on top of him. She's got her leg over his shoulder. She's trying to strangle him, and you see his fist just come together and clobber her.
Well, first, Billy Ray comes out and tries to fight him, and he just one punches Billy Ray Cyrus and then punches the girl on his back. It's so funny.
And it continues with the Adam Kesher.
Yeah, he's like a robot.
Oh yeah. I love how Billy Ray's Gene tries to be, the great big man who's going to take this guy out, and like you said, one punch and he is down, and you hear her cry out, Gene, and oh, it's good. And then Gene's on the ground, and now we get to the hotel that Adam's going to, and we're introduced to Cookie, the manager of the hotel, who is the boat captain from The Lost World Jurassic Park.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's, I was watching that for In Review a few weeks back, and I'm like, this guy looks really familiar. And so I'm on IMDb, and I'm like, oh shit, from Mulholland Drive. Okay.
With the big white mustache.
Super big mustache. It basically, give me about another 10, 15 years and let me rock the dad stash, and that will be my mustache. Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then let's see here. Adam's on the phone with his assistant, and this is where we finally see her. I can't remember the character's name, but she is maybe just a little too friendly. She obviously would like to comfort Adam in his time of need, but he's good. And this is where she introduces the idea of the cowboy. How he's supposed to drive up to the top of this one particular hill, and there's going to be a corral, and Adam is just not taking it seriously. Should I bring my 10-gallon hat and 6 shooters? And what does he say to her after she makes her final offer? Get along, little doggy. Yeah. He's just going to continue to make fun of the idea that there is a guy called the cowboy. Then I think we get Louise here at the apartment complex. Now you've seen Fire Walk with Me, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. How much did this lady remind you of the lady from the trailer park with the water bottle over her black eye?
I didn't think about it, but yeah.
Even though
I totally
I don't think it's the same actress or anything like that, but it's the same idea of, kind of somebody coming to check things out because there's something not right.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's such a weird scene.
And she's got kind of this, what's her face from Fleetwood Mac?
Stevie Nicks.
Yeah, she's got a very Stevie Nicks vibe, right?
Yeah, she's wearing like a shawl over her
Uh-huh.
head. There's so much about this scene that's so weird because she keeps saying like she told me. We don't know who that is. She just says something's wrong, somebody's in trouble. It's so weird.
And just again, much foreshadowing and all that. So then we get Adam driving up the hill to meet the cowboy, and he's kind of like snickering to himself as he's driving, like, yeah, fucking cowboy, blah, blah, blah. And he gets up there, and we get, the iconic David Lynch flickering lights, and this dude just walks.
Sounds that he loves.
Yep. And this dude just walks out of the shadows, and he's a motherfucking cowboy, all right. I kind of, low key want this guy's coat too. It is a badass old coat.
Apparently those are the guy's actual clothes that he owns, but they are the clothing of Tom Mix. You know who Tom Mix is? He's like the original cowboy actor from Hollywood.
Okay.
He's the guy who like set John Wayne up as a cowboy actor and stuff. And he was like actually a cowboy too. Like he's a dude who just like was a cowboy, had all these skills, and was like, wouldn't it be cool if like you filmed me doing this stuff?
Okay.
Yeah.
But it is a badass coat, and he's got his fucking hat and his kerchief and all that. Yep. And he basically lays it out for him. No. They start with a little bit of beating around the bush,
I think
lovely evening.
My favorite line in the movie where he goes, a man's attitude goes a long way in determining how his life will be. That's something you might agree with.
Sure. Yeah, whatever.
Now, do you actually agree with what I said, or did you just say that because that's what you thought I wanted to hear? Like the way the conversation is like written out and the way he delivers it, I love this scene so much.
Yeah, you feel just a little bit by little bit how deadly serious this person actually is, and maybe you shouldn't be fucking with him just because of his cowboy getup. Adam even pauses for a little bit as he has to respond to that question. And, he makes sure to answer in a correct way there. But, and then, he asks him to, kind of think about his situation. All right, I'm thinking. No, you're not thinking. You're too busy being a smart aleck.
I love it.
This is great back and forth, but essentially the gist of this conversation is you're going to go back to work tomorrow. They're going to show you this woman, Camilla Rhodes. You're going to say, yep, this is the girl. This is the fifth time that the phrase is said in the film, by the way. You're going to do all this. And, if you do right, you're going to see me one more time. If you do bad, you're going to see me 2 more times. Good night. Walks off into the shadows. And then the light just flickers out.
Yep. It's so weird. It's so good. Like every bit about this scene is like just perfect. Like the how many drivers does a buggy have?
Yeah.
I'm driving this buggy. And if you change your attitude, you can ride along with me.
Yes. It's so good. God, what was the other thing? I just had something else to say about it, and I'm just totally spacing on it. Just basking in the glory of the coolness of the scene here. But yeah. And then we kind of cut from here to the line reading between Betty and Rita, which starts off almost with the feeling of Betty casting Rita out, but then you see she's holding, pages in her hand, so it's very clear. Okay, because the line reading has the same sincerity that Betty brings to everything that she has to say, right? And it's like this horribly trite, dad's best friend, having an affair with his daughter type of scenario, bullshit TV movie thing. And, they kind of laugh about how shitty and trite it all is. But it's horrible.
It's not, it's especially like when you see it the first time, like in this scene, you're like, this is so bad, and their acting is really bad, and like you get the impression that Betty's not a very good actress from this scene here, which obviously is we're gonna see a little bit different later. But
yeah, absolutely. I think it's just, it plays this way in this moment too, because her character isn't taking it seriously.
There's also a line here that's like somewhat related to something happens later where she says like, you came back or whatever, which gets repeated again later on.
Yes. Yeah. And then we get a knock on the door from Coco, because guess what? Betty's aunt called. She don't know who Rita is. Oh shit. And Betty's like trying to be the smooth teenager, telling their parents that, they're just that pot's not theirs. She's holding it for a friend, right? But yeah, just trying to explain to Coco that Rita's a friend of hers. It wasn't her aunt's friend. But Coco's not buying it. What did she call what Betty's telling her? A load of horse pucky. Okay, that may be the first and only time that I've heard horse shit referred to like that, but that's cool.
Written for TV. It was written for TV.
That's fair. That's fair. There's so much of this pilot that just couldn't play on ABC. Maybe on NBC with Hannibal. I don't know. I think he could have gotten away with that, but yeah, not on ABC, especially not in 2000, 2001. So then we get Betty running off to our audition, and we get this great line, "Don't drink all the Coke." Sure, whatever, but I love it still. And it's audition time. It's again the lovely score for this film, the main theme. And I think it's Paramount Pictures where they filmed the exterior.
It is.
The gate.
They're not allowed to show the Paramount logo, but you can go under that and show the gate. And essentially the same shot from the movie Sunset Boulevard, and the car from Sunset Boulevard is there. And obviously earlier they live on Sunset Boulevard. There's the big homage. It's one of David Lynch's favorite movies, and there's a lot of homages to that.
Oh, and it totally makes sense because that is such a classic Billy Wilder film, and all about many, many themes that are present in this movie as well.
Yeah, and even with like the name of the movie, Sunset Boulevard, Mulholland Drive, it is sort of like, what if David Lynch did that movie? It would be really weird.
Made it even darker than when Andrew Lloyd Webber decided to turn it into a musical. Yep. Betty is introduced to all of these people in this audition for this shitty made-for-TV movie, because that's what I'm going to keep referring to it as, because that's what I think it is. And it's audition time, and they just crank out the scene, and holy shit, she is so much better actor than you ever would have expected from the line reading before. And it's super uncomfortable and super creepy, and she just puts it all out there.
Yeah, it's really, really good scene. And then the director is like not paying attention at all for some reason.
Yeah, I find it really off-putting, and I'm sure I'm supposed to, but he has to they keep reminding him ultimately. Yeah. To interject.
He doesn't care at all.
He's very checked out.
Yeah, but like everybody else in the room is just like totally blown away by it.
Yep. And also the scene partner for this is like the most like George Hamilton type of, incredibly dark tan,
Yeah.
just impossibly white teeth and hair. Um, but I'm curious if the casting director who's in this scene, who takes her off to Adam's film set, if she's supposed to be in any way based on the frequent casting director of David Lynch films, Joanna Ray. I would love to have an answer to that. I don't know. I suppose I could research it sometime. And just a little curiosity. And yeah, they drag her off to Adam's film set where things are back up and running. He's continuing to audition for the lead actress. And, you get this little, 50s Connie Stevens song with these, overly done up people lip syncing, and he's just chain smoking, and Betty just can't believe how cool it all is. The look on her face obviously says. And this audition wraps up. Adam talks with the actress. They have this great back and forth. And okay, who's next? Camilla Rhodes. And he does this little pause, lights his new cigarette from his old cigarette, and all right. And she starts her little song. It's Melissa George. And he asks for I can't remember if the guy's his manager or if he's one of the guys. It's either him or one of the guys.
Who's at the meeting earlier, and then they use he's the one who recommends that he goes out to the cowboy. They say his name in that scene, and I believe it's the same name. Yeah.
Yep, that makes sense. And we get this is the girl for the 6th time. And he also does another lean over the shoulder, lawning look at Betty again. And Betty's got to scoot. She just remembers she's got this thing she's got to do with her friend. And again, in this back and forth, I mentioned it earlier, the fucking pores on the faces in 4K are just, you could fall inside of them. They look so huge. It's so
movie
crisp.
Has so many close-ups of just like somebody making a weird face, and the camera's like just right there. Yeah, it looks so good in the Blu-ray.
And I'm one to talk because I have massive pores as well, but it's just so noticeable and just gorgeous. At some point in history, we're going to be throwing out all these discs, and we're going to have 8K media, and we're all going to be talking shit about what we just saw. But in the meantime, it's beautiful, and yet another good reason for the continued use of film for shooting movies, right? Because we'll be doing all the bitching that we do about the Star Wars prequels, about how shitty they tend to look in 4K with stuff like this, if that's not the case. So Betty's got to scoot, and she goes and picks up Rita, and they're going to go check out the the address of the only Diane Selwyn that we can find. I didn't mention earlier when Rita has this revelation that Diane could be her, that just somehow the last name pops into her head.
Yeah, it's like she sees the name tag on the waitress at the Winkies, and it like triggers a memory for her, and she remembers the name Diane Selwyn.
Right. So they get to the apartment, and they see this old car sitting outside with a couple of guys that look like heavies and sunglasses, and they kind of boss around the cab driver. And I'm thinking to myself as I'm watching this, there's nothing like trying to boss around a cab driver like you see in the movies. You're like, don't stop, turn here, and all that shit. It's I mean, I think it goes back to, again, this is very dreamlike. This is very
very movie-like. It's very tropey.
Yes, exactly. What many tropes can we pull from all sorts of things, because that's what somebody's dream of a situation like this would probably be, right? And here's where I write down something about pay attention to the haircuts. TV pilot versus reshoots.
Yes.
Not Diane and Joe, the inept hitman, versus their, alter egos later on, because they knock on the door of Diane's apartment and this lady answers, who is not Diane. And when we see her later in the film, her hair is very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
Usually the mark of a reshoot, and very clearly the mark of a reshoot in this film, even though
6 months later.
Yes, even though they are supposed to clearly be different people, and a lot of this was something else. It's very noticeable upon many rewatches just how different the haircuts are. So we find out that Diane and this lady switched apartments. Is that a thing?
It's so weird. And I can't, even when we see it happens again later, it's so weird. I don't know. I've never heard of it before. I don't know why it's a thing. Like,
It's very strange.
I guess because of what we're going to see later, I guess I always interpreted it that later they had also switched apartments, but that I don't think that is what's happening later on. And so this is sort of like, well, we'll get into later. I think this is sort of like just a made up thing of why they find this person there, but I don't know why. It's so weird.
I feel like it's maybe more like somebody moving out after a bad breakup type of thing. I don't know. It's very strange though. And it's weird how she mentions that they switched apartments and that she hasn't seen her in a while, and she just kind of looks off to the side and just major pregnant pause. And all right, well, she's going to go with them to Diane's apartment because she still has some of her stuff. And once again, somebody living in LA who's just going to leave her door open while she goes to do this. And then she hears her phone ringing and is like, yeah, I got to get that. You guys go on ahead. I'll catch up with you. And, they move on. And again, they kind of Nancy Drew / Scooby Doo this shit. And Betty decides to do a little bit of light B&E.
Yep.
And it's interesting. Whenever Betty's trying to do anything that is going to ultimately uncover more of who Rita is, Rita constantly tries to stop her from doing so.
Yeah.
I think, this most what I've been doing for these shows is I will watch the film to be able to, just kind of enjoy it and, just be able to just take it in, one or two sittings, and then go back and rewatch it to take some notes for the episode. Right. And I think this was the first time that I've really noticed this, that, Rita is just adamant that no, let's not do this.
Hesitant to keep the investigation going forward. And it's also like, they always need to work together. Like they can't just she can't just go do it off on her own. She always needs Rita to come help her with the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're dependent on each other.
Yeah. And, for probably many reasons at this point. And she helps her climb inside finally, and Betty unlocks the door, and it's clear that, God, it smells like somebody died in here. Because, and they go in, there's a horrible smell, and they slowly make their way through this dark apartment and push open a door and see somebody laying in the bed. And it's right as they round the corner of the bed to see this horrible dead for multiple days face that the lady from Diane's old apartment knocks on the door, scaring the shit out of them. And Rita, tries to scream. Betty covers her mouth so that they're not found out. And they kind of wait for this lady to go away. And when she does leave, they come running out of this apartment, and the great overlaid shots of just
Yeah.
her having her freak out.
It's and like all the sound is complete. She's screaming, but you can't hear anything.
Yeah.
It's such an effective scene. It's
Yep.
amazing.
Yep. And then we go to, what is, the most normal reaction to finding a dead body, especially of somebody who you thought you might be, trying to cut all your hair off.
Yep.
Yep. So Betty tells her, hey, I know what you're trying to do. I'm going to help you. And we cut to, is it a wig? I don't know. Because, it's wig time in this movie, for real. And, you get this, cute little blonde wig that they throw on Rita. And it's like Betty continues to try to groom her to be in some ways more like her, or just, I don't know. But, they figure, hey, this will kind of help keep you hidden if there's people out to kill you or whatever. At least that's what I'm trying to pick up from this. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah,
Is that the direction?
I think that is the intent, because she says like you don't have to wear it inside the apartment or whatever. But it is obviously, as you get into more about what the movie actually is, it is something with a double meaning. But yeah, the literal intention is so that you can pretend to be a different person, and
Right.
they're looking for this dark-haired person, but you're a blonde now.
Yep. And so, the deeper we move into this at this point, the more wooden and stilted Rita's dialogue becomes. She is absolutely becoming this doll for Betty to play with and control at this point. And this is where, she invites her into bed because she doesn't have to sleep on the couch and blah, blah, blah. And Rita takes off this towel and just climbs right on in. And before you know it, we've got sexy times. And the love scene is very, very awkward, but that score is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's
The score is like all the music in this movie is so incredible.
Yep, and it elevates what would otherwise be like a really dumb, awkward love scene into something far more powerful at this point.
I don't find it so awkward. I mean, it is initially awkward because of, it kind of should be, right? It's these two.
Yeah.
I mean, in the context of the film, it's these two women like discovering their sexuality and stuff, and it is sort of awkward. This is apparently the first time either of them has slept with another woman. But
Right.
I do find it to be like really well directed and a very like tender love scene. I really like it.
Yeah. Maybe it's the dialogue in it that just takes me out of it a little bit.
The dialogue is very silly. Have you ever done this before? I don't know.
Yeah. The amnesiac says, I don't know. But and we get this, what is it? I'm falling in love with you from Betty to Rita, or something along those lines. And, they cut away to them sleeping and holding hands, and Rita just starts talking in her sleep all of a sudden.
Also, she is sleeping with her eyes open.
Well, her eyes pop open eventually during this, but she is clearly, but clearly is still asleep until, Betty really wakes her up. But, silencio repeated over and over, and no hay banda, there is no band. And when she finally knocks her out of it, Rita's like, go with me somewhere now. It's 2 o'clock. It's 2:00 in the morning, now, right now. And it cuts to them piling into a cab, and it's the different shots of the streets as they're driving along. I think every time I see this film, I find it just more and more unsettling.
Yeah.
I don't know what it
starts off with that shot of them on like the corner waiting for the taxi.
And the camera's kind of following them, and it almost feels like they're being followed.
This is from this point forward. I mean, really, from the time they find the body, the camera starts doing some really strange things. Because obviously you get that weird like multi-picture effect. But yeah, like all these scenes have this like push forward to them, or the camera starts breaking up in a really weird way. And then actually, my favorite bit of camera work in the movie is when like they get to the club, and it starts off with that really long shot in the alleyway, and then it's like it's
Oh,
draped in blue. It's this amazing like the composition,
and we get the Evil Dead cam.
yeah, and then just it's so like it's so unsettling. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like
Yes.
that shot right there is my favorite thing in the movie.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much, and it goes all the way till it's like mashed into this blue door of the club.
Yeah.
And then they're walking into this theater, and the guy on the stage is saying everything that Rita was saying in her sleep, which is, unsettling enough.
It's Club Silencio, which is what she was saying earlier. Yeah.
And I noticed this for the very first time in this rewatch. Holy shit, that's Ronette Pulaski and Laura Palmer in the audience.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't see that.
Oh, yes. They're uncredited, but they're absolutely sitting there.
Oh my God, I'm gonna have to go back and watch it, because I was watching it last night. I was thinking, like, I wonder who's in the audience, and I looked up and see if like there were some credits for the people in the audience, and I didn't see any.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's incredible.
Yeah. Oh my God. I lost my shit when I finally saw it, because Cheryl Lee, she's fairly iconic look, right? Ronette, I can't think of the actress's name, but maybe less so to me. But, and I'm like, oh my God, that was fucking Cheryl Lee, right? And I look up, is Laura Palmer in the Club Silencio audience? And I immediately find a Screen Rant article about it. And I'm like, yep, it's her and Ronette Pulaski. And there's apparently a lot of conjecture on the internet about whether or not they are their characters from Twin Peaks.
That's interesting.
Yes, because this could be, another wing of the Black Lodge, perhaps.
Yeah.
This theater, which would kind of make sense considering how weird and, just all the shit that seems to happen in it. Yeah.
Cool. That's really cool.
So, I would like to read more into this. I'm very curious to hear what you have to say after you do so. But, yeah. And then we get this interesting little bit of performance art from here. It's all recorded. And you hear it in, both English, Spanish and French. And, they just kind of continue on. This guy comes out with a muted trumpet and plays a little bit. And then it's clear that it was actually a recording and he's not actually playing.
And like the things he's saying are like obviously very important. Like, no banda, right? There is no band. You're hearing all this music, but there is nobody actually here playing music. He says it's all an illusion.
And he's done.
Yeah.
And then everything shakes and he disappears in a cloud of smoke. And while all this is happening, Betty is shaking just uncontrollably. And like Rita's trying to keep her held down in her seat.
I love the shot of him disappearing, because he doesn't just like disappear. Like he like fades off the screen. It's so cool looking.
Yes, it's very, very cool. And then we get Rebecca Del Rio with her cover of Roy Orbison's Crying. Holy shit.
So good. Oh my God.
It's big.
So good.
Big emotion. I love the story behind this. How David Lynch was like somewhere, was it Nashville or Memphis or one of these places where, he just happened to be there where she was, and he recorded her singing the song unbeknownst to her. And I think largely that is the recording that is heard in the film.
The recording that's in the movie. Yeah, it was so like, he talks about it in the interview on the Criterion edition, where like he has essentially a music agent who just works for him and is just like, hey, he basically got a call. It's like, hey, you need to come down and check this out. There's this person here that you should go check out. And he goes down there and just like recorded the thing, saw the performance, blown away by it. And then later was just like, oh, we should put that in the movie. And I mean that kind of like the way he's like really obsessed with like putting musicians in his movies and
Mhm.
stuff, and like finding all these like the music in Twin Peaks, like some of like
Well,
there's that
I was just
I
going to
love
say Twin Peaks The Return. Basically, almost every single
yeah
episode ends with a performance at the Roadhouse, including one from Rebecca Del Rio at one point or
yeah
another. Um,
yeah
yeah.
so I love the way that he incorporates stuff, and this performance is so good.
Oh,
It's
it's haunting.
Yeah, and
It's just,
you watch it in its entirety. You just sit down and you listen to the song, and I
you
mean,
make
and
sure your speakers are up. You
yes, and
don't care about your neighbors at that point.
I have my great good stereo system with the good speakers, and
Hmm.
the Criterion edition. It sounds incredible. It's so
Absolutely.
good.
Yeah. And so they are feeling all the emotions as they're listening to this, and they both are just crying their eyes out. And Betty grabs her purse for probably a tissue. And as she opens it up, she finds this big blue box
Hmm.
of the same shade as the funky blue key from earlier in the film. And well, as all this is happening, Rebecca passes out on stage, but the song continues because, again, it's all a recording. And Cookie the MC comes back along with another guy, and they just pick her up and drag her off the stage. And there's also this lady in a theater box. Um, you know, she's the Abe Lincoln of this story, I guess. I don't know.
Blue
But
hair. She's just there.
mhm, just kind of staring through all this. I just, bring her up for obvious reasons. We'll get back to her. But we cut to Betty and Rita heading back home, and I'm sure it's probably about 3:34 in the morning at this point. And they enter the apartment, and they're like, okay, let's figure out what's going on with this box. And Betty goes and puts the bag down on the bed. It cuts over to Rita going into the closet for the hat box. They come back to the bed. Betty's not there. And Rita's like,
It's not a cut, right? Like Betty sets it down,
no.
she walks off camera, and then she disappears.
Yeah, she essentially disappears when the camera moves away from her. I love shit like that, by the way. um
It's so cool. This sequence is weird.
mhm. Yep, because Rita is like a Betty, because she was right behind her and now she's gone. And donde está? And Rita, she's a little freaked out, but she gets the key out. She opens up that box. I feel like David Lynch built this box himself. He had to have, right?
Yeah, I don't know. The box is so like it's
The layers of the inside of the
yeah.
lid. I love it. And
It's
I'm
got
sure you've
the
seen,
lip, and it's oh
mhm.
man, it's so cool.
And I'm sure you've seen plenty of videos of him doing woodworking and stuff.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that I think he would have built this himself. But she opens this thing up, and the camera goes into the box because it's clearly swallowing us up. And the box falls to the ground with a big old thunk. And Rita's now gone as well. And we get Betty's Aunt Ruth walking back into the room because she heard a thunk on the floor. The camera moves down. Nothing is there.
This is
Everything is
one of the
gone.
weirdest bits of the movie, because it's one of the parts that, like, especially as we're gonna start getting deep into what's going on.
Oh, sure.
This scene. Nobody ever talks about this scene, that the aunt is in the apartment again, and then like it does, like it cuts away and it cuts back, like she walks out of the room and it does a cut, and then we're back in the apartment again for a little bit of time. It's
Mm-hmm.
so weird. Like the construction of sequences is just like
Yep. And
maddening.
yeah. And I'm, I guess I'll say it now before I forget. But I'm curious if the essentially the person who is Aunt Ruth to Betty in this narrative of the first part of the room is somebody who, as Betty is taken out of this, is kind of coming back to the real world and sort of is their own person again. And that's why nothing is there.
That's an interesting interpretation.
It's just kind of how I was thinking of it in this rewatch. And that's the fun of a lot of David Lynch films. I think there's something new to pick up, and there's all sorts of different ways, because he is notorious for being like extra cagey for, you know, what his film actually means. He doesn't do commentaries. He likes to do single chapters on a film release for, you know, media, so that you can't skip from chapter to chapter. It encourages you to sit and watch the entire thing in one go, as one probably should for a lot of films. Totally not respecting your time, but yeah, I'm curious about that. But yes, we cut from that to hey, pretty girl, time to wake up.
Cowboy's back,
and Diane wakes up with slightly different hair now.
Yeah.
And well, it's Naomi Watts. Betty is now Diane. And there's like a very, very loud knock at the door. And she just groggily gets out of bed, throws on a robe, and it's the lady who she switched apartments with.
Yeah, the lady from apartment 12.
Yes. You know, asking about getting her stuff and her lamp and her dishes and all that. And her hair is super different at this point. And as the camera tracks past the coffee table, we see the blue key, a different blue key.
Yeah. This one
there.
is very regular looking. It's just blue.
But I think for the sake of timelines and the story, it's important to notice that the key is there. So lady from apartment 12 gets her shit, notices that her ashtray is there, and, you know, gets that too. And Diane's like, just please, for the love of God, get the fuck out of here. And finally leaves, goes over to the kitchen, couple of beats, and realizes, oh, Camilla's here. And guess who Camilla is this time?
Camilla, you came back.
Yes.
And it cuts over. You see Rita as now Camilla. And then it cuts back to Naomi Watts just losing her damn mind.
And it's this weird, you know, her kind of hyperventilating, crying her eyes out, seeing Camilla again. But then all of a sudden she's at a different angle and calm again. And, you know, this is where she decides to, you know, make some coffee. And it's such a weird cut from her throwing the grounds in the filter, firing up one of those tiny little shitty 3-cup coffee makers that I think we all had in college. And then this kind of weird snap to the coffee just about being done.
Yeah.
She fills up this super cool brown diner style coffee mug that I wish I had one of those.
The same mug from the Winkies before.
Because of course it is, right?
Yeah.
And she fills that up, and there's this cool cut of her walking towards the couch. We move over the couch. There's Rita naked on the couch, and it cuts to Diane, or not Diane. Yeah, Diane, and not Rita. Camilla. See, I can keep this shit straight. But she's climbing over the couch, and it's no longer coffee in her hand, but like a bourbon or something. It's some kind of brown liquor in a tumbler there. And topless. And more sexy times. Except, you know, Camilla, she's, you know, I'm kind of done with this. And Diane gets a little handsy with her, and she's like, no. And she's kind of wanting to end this thing. You get this comment from Diane about, it's him, isn't it? And we cut from there to the set of a film. And it's Camilla and Adam in a car, and it's time to get real comfortable. I don't know. It's creepy because it's Adam, the director, trying to show this actor how he wants him to be with Camilla, but he's clearly just using the opportunity to get extra friendly with Camilla. Meanwhile, Diane is watching this whole thing. Think of it this way. It's basically him cuckolding her in the way that he was in her dream.
Yeah. Yeah. That checks out.
Yeah. Lights!
It's such a... He does like the clear out the set, and Camilla asks if Diane could stay there, and then she gives Diane this like weird look.
Please watch this.
Yeah, that is one thing from this section of the film is that like Camilla seems to really like enjoy making Diane really uncomfortable, especially around Adam.
I don't know if that's her being her like purposefully trying to make Diane feel bad, or her doing it in a way to ensure that she drives her away. Maybe it's a little bit of both.
I take it as more as I'm not sure if it's actually Camilla's intentions. It's more of the way like Diane is interpreting what's happening.
Yeah, and that's another thing that we have to consider because there's a whole lot of unreliable narrator type of shit going on here. This is all from Diane's perspective, and she is clearly fucked in the head in this film. Mm-hmm. So yeah. So this part ends and we get this little fight between Diane and Camilla where it's clear that Diane's going to have the last word in this story, right? God damn it. And, she basically forces Camilla out of her place after they've had this fight. And then we get the incredibly uncomfortable masturbation scene where apparently, David Lynch had to put like this little tent over Naomi Watts' head so that she wouldn't have to see any of the crew around her as she acted this out. But she is just violently masturbating and sobbing. And the shot of her perspective looking at the fireplace, the stonework, just coming in and out of focus like crazy.
Yeah, it's more of that like really strange camera work that keeps showing up. Yeah, it's awesome.
It's intense, and horribly uncomfortable.
Yeah,
and then we move from there to after a brief little.
She hears the phone ring, right, and then she like.
Yes, her head whips to the side, and it's the phone with the red lamp and the ashtray. And she's all dressed up and she slowly walks over to the phone. Again, very, very different hair from when she was Betty. And she picks it up and it's Camilla and, hey, the car's outside and you're coming, right? It's a big deal. And then we get the, basically Diane living through the beginning of the film.
Yep.
We're back on Mulholland Drive. And they stop the car and we get the whole, what are you doing? We don't stop here. And instead of a, silenced pistol, it's, hey, it's a surprise. And it's Camilla coming out of the woods to lead Diane on a little walk. And Camilla can lead me through the woods anytime because holy shit, she is stunning. And again, the score in this scene is just crazy impactful. And she just walks her up the hill to this house. And we kind of shift from the crazy powerful synth score to, the more Audrey Horne style. Angelo, the snaps and everything. And, we're on the pool deck and, Adam comes out, he's got drinks and the super awkward toast. And, again, Camilla, kind of forcing Diane to watch. But, like you said, this very well could be Diane's perspective of how this is playing out. We get the reintroduction of Coco. And then we move
Adam's mom this time around.
Yes. And we move on to one of the most uncomfortable dinners ever, because there's nothing like sitting through an awkward dinner with your ex and her new beau. We get Angelo, we get the other Camilla, and we get the cowboy during all of this, along with similar descriptions of, coming from Deep River, Ontario, after winning a jitterbug contest, how her aunt left her some money, blah, blah, blah. Basically laying out most of the points of the beginning of this film. And, hopefully at this point, everything's starting to click for somebody watching this film as far as what they've actually been witnessing, at least on second viewing. I hope it is. But, we get all this stuff, and it's clear that they're about to announce their engagement, and Diane is just losing her shit at this point. She's, clearly just tearing up while watching all this shit happening around here. And then when she just can't take it anymore, we get this crash of dishes and we're back in the Winkies.
Yep.
And this time we get Betty, the waitress, instead of Diane. So
it's a real mindfuck the first time you watch it.
Yeah. It's but it's so fun, so good. And she serves her some coffee, asks if there's anything else they can get, and it's Diane meeting with Joe the Hitman, and his hair is very different now because, of course, this is reshoot time, right? And she pulls out the headshot of Camilla, this time played by Laura Haring, along with the words, "This is the girl," for the 7th time in the film. And she's clearly hiring a hit on her ex-girlfriend at this point. When he tells her that when the job is done, you're going to find this blue key here. And then when she asks, what is it open? What is your take on that? Is his laugh more of a, what do you fucking think this means? It's just a sign that the job is done. Or is it supposed to be something more meaningful than that?
I think it is supposed to be something more meaningful. I'm not entirely sure what his meaning is there. But I've heard some different theories that are like extremely complicated, but I do believe that like the key you are supposed to come up with some kind of idea of what the key opens. I think that is sort of important. I'm not totally sure why. Like, I don't have my mind completely wrapped around every part of this movie. I have sort of like general feelings about how I'm supposed to interpret it, and I'm honestly probably going to watch this movie like 5 more times this year.
Here's the thing, Brandon. I have watched this film over and over for over 20 years now, and I don't know that there's necessarily supposed to be more meaning to what that key is. It could just be, pretentious David Lynch bullshit.
Well, so my sort of general view about the film in general, and it's why I like it, and it's why I've really been getting into David Lynch, was that I think that he doesn't intend meaning there. I think he intends you to bring meaning to it. And that's what I love about the film. That's what I love about all this stuff, is that he's laying out all these things for you to grasp onto. I think it's You've just listened to essentially a plot synopsis of the movie, and it's obviously extremely
Yeah.
confusing. It's less about the plot of the movie, and it's more like an emotional journey
Yeah,
that you
it's about
go
the
through
feeling
in.
that you
Yes.
interpret from the film,
Yeah.
and that's totally cool. And people are going to take that in different ways because people are very human, and they will. And that's fucking perfect.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Yes. It's so good.
Yeah. So we cut from here back to the man in back of this place, kind of playing with the blue box, and he just drops it into this gross paper bag and then drops it on the ground. And we get the creepy old people.
Yeah. The old people turn tiny and they run out of the box.
And they get the, super pitched up voices laughing maniacally.
It must have been so fun for these actors to just like run around and go, ah!
Yes.
I love it.
Yes, it's so good. And we get back to Betty sitting on the couch after she had poured that cup of coffee from maybe about half an hour ago. And she's staring at the blue key on her coffee table. And I just have here in my notes, coffee and catharsis, more like raging guilt. Because I think the old folks really are kind of manifestations of her guilt in some ways, because all of a sudden you thought the knocks from earlier in the film were loud, but the pounding on the door that starts, kind of distorted and almost like drowned out, like you've got noise canceling cans on or something like that. As these old people crawl under the door and the old man helps the little old lady back up, and they laugh with each other, and all of this is kind of rising, and the knocks are rising in volume, and the lights are starting to flash, and all of a sudden, here come the olds, because Diane is screaming and these old folks are laughing maniacally and waving their... Yes. Yeah, basically chasing her through her apartment. And essentially Diane's guilt chases her to the bed, and she decides to end it all. She fishes a revolver out of the drawer and puts one in her head, and the smoke, similar to the smoke from Club Silencio, just rises all around her. And, we get the swelling score and the shot of Betty and Rita in her blonde wig, kind of just smiling and just lit in this heavenly glow. It's almost like the end of Fire Walk with Me, when Laura dies and there's the angel floating above, and she's crying because she finally has the release from her situation. And in some ways, she knows she's dead, but she has the hope that she has in some ways been saved, right?
Yeah.
And, if it hasn't been abundantly clear from listening to a lot of this, or at least from a couple of rewatches of this film yourself, essentially the first, 2/3 of this film have been sort of a fever dream that Diane has been experiencing in the last moments as she pulled this trigger and killed herself, of a better life for herself, of a world in which she and Camilla could have been happy together, in which Camilla loved her and was never going to leave her. And the score kind of wraps up, and we get the lady with the blue hair in the theater box who whispers one last time, Silencio, and then we get credits.
Yeah.
Fucking A.
It is a wild film.
So that was like the most basic interpretation of the plot right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are some of your other theories as far as what could be going on?
So I find, like, obviously there is, like, dreams are an extremely important idea in the movie. And but I do find it, the general quote unquote theory, or like, if you pull up an explaining Mulholland Drive, what you're going to get is going to be the first part of the movie is a dream, the second part of the movie is real life. That's what they're going to say is like, that's the meaning of the movie. And I think that is mostly, generally speaking, true because it's obviously intended that way when you watch it. But I think it is a little reductionist to just sort of boil it down to that. One, because I think it's pretty bold to say that the second half of the movie is real life. It's
because it's very
also,
much a fever dream in and of itself.
Yeah, it does not operate on. It continues the weird dream logic. This weird listing through scenes. They're not presented in order. It's very clear that like Naomi Watts is somewhat like being dragged through these scenes. Like she will like hear a noise in one scene and she will jerk her head over to the side and she's in a different place. So I think that the movie has this I think the first part of the movie is not like a literal dream. I think it's more of interpretive of like, you know, the Hollywood dream. It's not like a literal sleeping dream, right? I have a feeling that because the movie starts with the old people and ends with the old people, and it seems that the old people come out of the box, I sort of feel like at the end of the film, they're like dragging her back into the dream. You know what I mean? That's sort of kind of where I'm at with it right now. But there's so many different parts of this movie. And then like one big thing that I picked up on the last time that I watched it last night was the sequence in Club Silencia with the song, and that, you know, it's all an illusion, but that the illusion keeps going on like after the singer passes out or dies and she's dragged off. The illusion keeps going. I think this might I think the movie is sort of intended to be like a loop, and that like it keeps happening forever. It doesn't matter that Diane has died, like it keeps going. I still don't know what the cowboy's about. Why is the cowboy, there's this weird part in between the dreams and the cowboy's there. I don't think people talk about the part in between the dream enough, you know? Because that's what really confounds me.
Well, and that's, you know, I had brought about you know, Aunt Ruth, you know, just suddenly appearing again after this portion seems to have ended, but still kind of seeming to be the same. I don't know.
Also,
I think
the cowboy says that like he says it to Adam, you'll see me one more time if you do good. You'll see me two more times if you do bad. But we're the ones who see the cowboy twice.
Right. Yep. We see him when he says, "Wake up, pretty girl." We see him at the dinner party.
Yeah. So what does that say?
Yeah.
Because we're the only people who see the cowboy two more times.
Maybe he's talking to us in that scene up on the top of the hill in the corral.
There's so much about this film that you can really dig into, and it's like, oh man,
I'm sure there are off the rails theories about it as well. Like this is, you know, David Lynch's basically him releasing his guilt about helping to cover up the moon landing being a hoax. Wait, no, that's a totally different film. But yeah,
the craziest thing about it is that none of the stuff in the ending, all the things that people like, because people will bring up like anything that happens in the dream, and they'll be like, "Well, this is why that's happening in the dream." Like the scene with the hitman, people will say like, "That's happening in the dream because she wants to imagine that the hitman is bad at his job, so maybe he doesn't end up killing Camilla." But the thing is that none of that was written with the intention of this being a dream. That's all stuff that David Lynch came up with afterwards.
in one day,
in a night, just through a meditation.
Oh my God.
That's one thing that's like really truly amazing about this movie, was that he was able to put this whole ending together with it where it fits cohesively. And if you think about it, you know, there are people who will literally just like, everything connects in a way that if you're just doing the whole, this is a dream, this is a reality, it makes perfect sense. And if you want to dig much deeper into that, it still all makes sense. It's a brilliant piece of work.
Absolutely, it is. I think the only David Lynch film that I have never seen is The Straight Story. and it is his most like paint by numbers, like drama that is like a fairly straightforward story about a man traveling a couple of states away, driving a lawnmower to go to his brother's funeral. And it's got the usual David Lynch grotesques in it. And that's all I know of it. But everything else that he's done, it's like even fucking Dune, right? The sleeper must awaken. And there's so much like dream logic going on. And it's like you said you recently saw Eraserhead, right?
Yes.
That is a film that I feel like should be required viewing for every, person who's about to become a parent. Not necessarily in a fuck you way, but it just make sure you're good for this.
I need to watch the rest of his movies and stuff. I'm really like I said, I've seen this movie 4 times this year. I plan on watching it several other times this year. I do think this is one of my favorite movies right now. I think I'd probably put this like top 5 favorite movies now.
Yeah. Oh, it's easy to see why people just extol the virtues of Mulholland Drive. And it is not a film for everyone. That is for sure. Yeah. It's, there were plenty of critics that were very harsh on this in its initial release. And
I'd say it's probably not a movie for everyone. I understand why some, like a general audience, probably wouldn't like this movie. It totally makes sense. But
it's
it is
very much art house fever dream, right?
Yeah. It's a movie that since I watched it, I haven't really stopped thinking about it. I don't think I've ever, apart with, my favorite movie of all time is Blade Runner. It's a movie that I watch several times a year ever since that I saw it, like over 10 years ago. I think I talk about the movie a lot. I think this is one of the only movies where I've had like really wanted to dive deep into the movie and think about it as much as Blade Runner. It's a fantastic film.
I'm glad you think so. This has been very fun because this is a film worth discussing with friends. It's absolutely worth poring over because it's one of those films that you kind of get out of it what you put into it to a certain degree. And
I would say it's also one of those situations, like I've seen some very, very in-depth theory videos and stuff. And I do think that it is one of those things where it's what you say about it says more about you than it does about David Lynch.
That's probably very true.
Because you'll see these theories where they're extremely deep about like sort of exploitation of actresses in Hollywood and stuff like that, and maybe some like Harvey Weinstein type things going on. And I'm like, and people will talk about it and they'll be like, David Lynch is doing this with this scene, and David Lynch is doing that with this scene. It's like, no, I think your brain is doing that with that scene.
Yeah, I think that's very, very likely. I think super top level, he could have been making some of those commentaries, but he's not calling anybody out specifically. He's not, none of that is happening in this film. Yeah, I'm sorry. No, but yeah, it's very much both a love letter and a condemnation of Hollywood right here, all in one. And that's cool by me. I would love to see him do another feature film at some point in his life. I don't know that that's ever going to happen. He is content to do a daily weather report on YouTube, and I'm also okay with that. Aren't they good? They're so good. It's just every once in a while I'll need like a little bit of a pick me up in my day, and I'll just go and watch his weather report and watch him.
July 14th. It's sunny outside.
Clear skies and sunshine all the way. Or he'll lace into Putin for like a minute and a half because, I'm
surprised we got this far before I started doing I love David Lynch's voice so much.
Oh, he's so good. He's
I
so
really
good.
like to imagine, like, I would love so much, like, there's, on the Criterion Blu-ray, there is, like, there's some, like, on-set footage of him, like, directing and stuff,
Mhm.
and it, like but, like, he's very cautious about, like, letting them near him while he's talking to actors and stuff. I would really like to just be on set to hear David Lynch, like, just or even just, like, describing what happens in a scene. "Okay, so you're going to drink the coffee, and then you're going to spit out the coffee, and then you're gonna scream."
Yes, please. Yes, please. Could you imagine just having lunch with him at the counter at a Bob's Big Boy?
Oh man. I would love to hang out with David Lynch. The weird thing is that like anytime you hear people talk about him, he's apparently surprisingly normal to just hang out with.
Oh, yeah. He's supposed to be like the sweetest gentleman in the entire
Yeah.
world.
And just like a normal guy who makes really fucking weird movies.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you imagine? And I know there have been some interesting edits that have shown us what this could have been like. Can you imagine if he didn't do Dune and did Return of the Jedi after all?
You know, that would have been really, really interesting. I don't think it would be as wild as people think.
No, no, because I think it would have been incredibly studio controlled
Well,
to the
not even
point.
studio, just Lucas essentially used Marquand as a ghost director, and I
Oh,
get the
yeah.
feeling that it probably would have been a similar thing with David Lynch. And also, like
I,
the only reason that he was even like in contention for it was just because he wasn't a union director.
yeah, and people liked his, version of the Elephant Man. Um,
Which I mean, it's really good.
yeah. Oh
Yeah,
God, yeah. Anthony
yeah,
Hopkins is outstanding in
yeah.
that film.
The makeup in that's fantastic. Invented
Hmm.
the special the makeup Oscar
Yeah,
because people were so upset that he didn't win an Oscar for that. Yeah, it's he can direct normal stuff. Like
yeah.
the
He just
Elephant Man is
chooses not
surprisingly
to.
normal. Yeah, he's just like when you get him to make his movie, he's like, okay, well, it's gonna be fucking weird.
Well, I gotta say, I'm super stoked to hear that Lost Highway release is no longer a rumor, and it is absolutely happening.
Yeah,
That's
I need to watch
exciting.
that again. I haven't seen that one since probably around 2012, 2013 when I was
So
watching Twin Peaks for the first time.
back in the day, when I lived in the Ann Arbor area around undergrad, they had at the local mall a kind of art house movie theater in the mall. And it was weird. They would always do like, your typical indie films, but occasionally they would do like super cool double features. And I was lucky enough to go see Lost Highway back to back with Wild at Heart.
Oh, I haven't seen Wild at Heart yet. That's good. That's I need to watch that
Oh,
one. I
it
like I said, I
is,
haven't seen most of his movies I haven't seen yet.
it's a treat. Nick Cage and Laura Dern are fan
Yeah.
fucking tastic. It's such a love letter to the Wizard of Oz and Elvis.
Sounds good. Sounds awesome.
Yeah, yeah. With many, many David Lynch tropes throughout. And it's, yeah, I will love to hear what you have to say once you do finally get to see that film. Any final thoughts on Mulholland
Yeah,
Drive?
I have a question for you because like, do you consider this a horror movie? Because this is a
I mean,
horror movie podcast.
I do.
And yeah,
I do. It's absolutely more in the thriller camp, but I consider thrillers horror films.
okay.
It's there is plenty of horror to be found in this film. Just from just horrific situations, from Diane's just, I think, the hatred of her situation and the horrific things that she has done. And, even in trying to dream up this other reality, if that is what it is, she still can't get away from horrible shit happening to her.
Yeah.
It all comes full circle at some point or another. Bad things are going to happen to this woman.
Yeah,
Um,
there is this like overwhelming sense of dread. Even when
mhm.
everything's happy and nice, there's still those shots of the old people just laughing maniacally in the limo and stuff. It's like you know that something isn't right the entire time. And
Yes.
yeah, but like I was surprised because like I would like it wasn't on my mind at all. Like when we initially talked about doing this podcast, or whatever, and you're like, "Well, there's some of your favorite horror movies, and we could do Mulholland Drive." And I was like, "Mulholland Drive? That was a horror movie podcast." I mean, I'll talk about Mulholland Drive, but that's so weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Oh,
guess I do see it. Like especially like watching it again this time, I was like, yeah, there is really just like this general. It's like if you ask me to describe it, I would never use horror to describe it, but it does have a lot of horror elements. Yeah.
yeah. And I'll say there are plenty of people that are like, oh, I don't like scary movies. I don't like horror movies. But then they start listing all these different thrillers and very horror adjacent properties. And
Silence
it's
of the
like,
Lambs.
yeah,
Silence of the Lambs is a horror
guess
movie.
what? Silence of the Lambs is the most Oscar winning horror film ever made.
Yeah, if you don't think
Or at
Silence
least
of the
one
Lambs
of
is
them.
a horror movie, you're dumb. It's
Yeah.
it's a horror movie.
Absolutely it is. Yes. And yeah, there is such an undercurrent of dread running through this film as well. And I gotta say, David Lynch, when you look at a lot of his works, is like one of the greatest horror movie directors of all time. Between this and Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, which is straight up horror film.
Yes.
And Eraserhead, which is pretty damn horrifying.
That's another one where it's like people say that, and I have a hard time calling that one a horror movie because generally speaking,
man.
when I watch the movie, I'm not scared. There's sequences in the movie that are genuinely terrifying, and yet when I look back at the film, I don't think of it like, oh, I wasn't scared during it. It's like it's very existential.
Oh yeah, it's about the existential dread and horror of becoming a father. It's it's rough, man. It's but yeah, between those and parts of Wild at Heart and Inland Empire, which I'm sure I'll have a different interpretation on once I finally get to see it again. But yeah, man, he knows what he's doing as far as scaring the socks off of you, and not necessarily in the typical jump scare, thriller, slasher, or horror film kind of way, but in just this overall horrific feeling of dread. And
yeah, it's very the Twin Peaks thing of it too, where Twin Peaks is a horror series, but most of the series whole episodes go by without any scary stuff happening, any sort of like dread going on and stuff. But it's
and it's all the kooky, funny, quirky. And
yeah, it is that whole thing about like what is essentially encompasses all of David Lynch, which is this the duality of everyday life, right? Like that underneath life is this like
everything that Blue Velvet is about,
Yes.
the insects seething beneath the idyllic grass. And
that's what all Twin Peaks is about. That's what a lot of this movie is about. And I mean this I was really surprised when I watched this for the first time, comparing it to Lost Highway, which was one of the only other movies I had seen at the time, where it was like, this is like, it's almost exactly Lost Highway. Like when you break down like the story,
characters becoming other characters suddenly, and using that to work through what they've already experienced, or vice versa.
Probably killed somebody else. And I was like, man, it's so weird that like he essentially just did like the same movie back to back and nobody cared, but it's still so different. And but it is because he keeps doing those. He likes to circle around those same themes a lot.
Yeah. Well, dude, this was a ton of fun.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed this, man. I love talking about this movie. I love talking about movies with you too. We do it a lot on Twitter. It's fun. Yeah,
well, we'll get you back for something else sometime, and
we'll do Eraserhead next.
Yeah. Mr. Ruckus, where can people find you?
Just follow me on Twitter at Jose Ruckus. I'll let you know where everything else is after that.
All right, man. Well, again, thanks for coming on. This has been Murders with Mertens, a horror film podcast. Thank you for letting us tickle your ear holes, but don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and all that. And I'll be back soon enough with another episode. But until next time, stay spoopy, everyone.